Welcome to a very special all-Yaffee Heartland Journal podcast featuring two spirited commentators, Michael Yaffee of the Yaffee Show, heard on News Talk 92.5 FM and 770 AM WVNN, and of course, Steve Abramowicz, your host of the Heartland Journal Podcast, editor-in-chief of the heartlandjournal.com. Now buckle in for a great show of the very best of the Yaffee and Steve Show. Welcome to the Heartland Journal Podcast with Steve Abramowicz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM WVNN. This is the Yaffee program. I am Alabama's voice of reason. Don't forget, if you ever miss any of the show live, check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available or on the website, WVNN.com. Joining me on the show right now is Steve Abramowicz. He is the founder of the Heartland Journal. You can read his columns and get the latest news at heartlandjournal.com. Steve, how are you today, my friend?
I am doing so great. I have to apologize for everybody. I think I brought this weather. This is Seattle weather, and it is Tennessee in June. I don't understand it.
Don't bring it to Alabama then, because you're in Tennessee, but it's like...
I heard you guys got some pretty good wetness yesterday.
Yeah. It's definitely the whole Tennessee Valley is really affected.
That would be Auburn's fault, not mine.
So let's start talking about Iran. What is your take on this? Because Trump came out and he said unconditional surrender. Now, he hasn't done anything yet, but he met with his National Security Council. They're weighing possibly joining in some of the airstrikes because they would need the B-2 bomber to get to that facility under the mountains in Fordo. So what is your take on everything going on?
Well, the battleships have been deployed. They're on their way. We've got a huge Air Force on their way. And, they talk about saber rattling, and Trump is, great at being able to carry a big stick and then actually get something done. But the bottom line is, I think within 24 hours, Israel basically won the war. I mean, they knocked out everything, even their chief military commanders, and then the second one up, also dead. So there really is no military threat anymore from Iran. Now it's really just down to, look, turn off the lights on your nuclear program or we're going to use the bunker busters, because we are not going to allow this. And rumor has it, they found an undiscovered 2,600 acres that was being used by China to develop that. They had a bomb already that was never disclosed. So literally, Trump gave them 60 days. On the 61st day, this all started. And the news likes to make it out to be World War III, but you can't have World War III without somebody fighting back on the other side. It's not a war. It's an airstrike. So my humble opinion is Russia and China have sat back and said, well, I guess game over. And maybe, just maybe, Israel has created the safest world that we've ever seen, because the biggest nuclear threat out there was Iran, and they don't have it anymore.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Now, there are some who are worried about American involvement because they think it would get us in another forever war. I'm not one of those people, by the way. I think we can all see the difference between, say, invading Iraq and doing some airstrikes to disable a nuclear program in Iran. Those are two different things.
Yeah, well, Iraq is a good example, but it's a much smaller country. Iran has 92 million people, and we have a Trump in office who is basically, his first term was historically the only one that ever didn't start a war, right? So he's not a war president. He doesn't want to be, never will be. He's not Eisenhower, who won the Second World War and then came in as a anti-military industrial complex president. This guy is already that first and not second. So I don't expect that. There won't be boots on the ground in Iran. They don't need to take over Tehran like they tried to go after Baghdad after Iraq because Saddam was still on the loose, hiding in a spider hole. So this is different. This is now we have the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, there all alone with his religious, blanket saying like, I want the Imam to come back. But all of his military leaders are gone. The last Trump term, they took out Soleimani, if you remember that, and they had his ring as a picture to prove that they actually took out his car, because it's easy. People don't understand. Iran is not exactly France or Germany. You can walk right into the supreme leader's office unencumbered. They don't have like huge security. This is not World War III, because our opponent, if they were our opponent, would have to be a global superpower that everybody would get behind, or at least half of us, like the Axis powers. This isn't that. So what the press is doing is actually drumming up this kind of false narrative to say, ooh, moral equivalency, America versus Iran, the big showdown, like the Iron Sheik versus Hulk Hogan in the old WrestleMania days, if you remember that. It's not. It's a monarchy or a theocracy against the world's greatest superpower. I just posted on my Twitter the difference between how many bombs we have and our next biggest rival, which would be Russia, and Russia's not interested. They wanted to step in and negotiate peace deals. So it's just not the headliner that everybody is making it out to be. Now, could I be wrong? Could they launch a nuclear missile and it doesn't matter how big your country is, that would take out a whole big city? Sure, if they had that capability. But I think Israel knocked it all out in 24 hours. I really do, because if you look at the target that they did, it was much better. Then they launched all their missiles in retaliation against Israel over the next 2 days. Now they don't have any left. So it's really like, well, okay, World War III came and went. Didn't even sell tickets, pay-per-view.
Now, do you think this could lead to possible regime change? Not from us, but maybe like, on the ground where the people rise up against the Ayatollah?
Well, I think it happened. This is what I'm trying to say, is that the regime change happened because there's two regimes inside of Iran, because it's a theocracy. They have the spiritual version, the very Shia Muslim version, and then they had their military industrial complex, which would be like their government, like Iraq had under Saddam and his sons. That's gone. So now all they have is the religious folks. So if they want to worship Allah or God, fine. That's great. That doesn't affect their neighbors. They're not going to nuclear bomb Israel for that. So the regime did technically change by just taking out. This is exactly what happened with Hamas, by the way, in the Gaza Strip. They took out their military wing and a lot of their infrastructure, sadly, which left them nothing but just civil servants who could go around and pick up the trash and tax people, right? So that is a regime change, because you've gone from a military industrial complex to a democracy, technically, although they won't get to vote anytime soon, although Hamas was voted in 20 years ago and they never had a second election. But you see what I'm trying to say is, like, they took off one of the heads of the Hydra. All that's left is the one that just wants to worship God. So the people in the street, who are mostly Muslim, they're mostly Shia actually, they'll just do that they do every day. Pray 4 times a day and go back to work. They don't have to worry so much about lashing outward at their neighbors, the Houthis or the Shia Muslims in Syria or in Gaza, because those are already gone. That was last year's war. And they took out their base in Lebanon, they took out their base in Syria, and they took out their base in the Gaza Strip. So Iran was already a paper tiger. Remember, they launched that ICBM and Israel shot it out of the sky, and it was about as slow as a metro bus. It just proved that they didn't have it, but they thought they were ready for prime time. And Israel said, I don't think so. We're done with this. And then, yes, of course, civilians got hit, infrastructure got hit. Wars are terrible, collateral damage, terrible thing, but not World War III. They're not leveling Dresden.
Speaking with Steve Abramowicz, he is with the Heartland Journal. You can read his great stuff at heartlandjournal.com. Did want to move on to other topics beyond Iran. In fact, you were telling me some breaking news where the Attorney General of Tennessee had a major victory when it came to, transgender, quote unquote, affirming care, which it's just a ridiculous term, but transgender puberty blocker stuff for minors. There was a big case involving Tennessee, of course. It affects Alabama, other states as well. Talk about that a little bit.
Sadly, not Alabama. It's only the Sixth Circuit, but we'll get there one day. And that's Ohio and Kentucky and Illinois, which is major, and Michigan, I believe, and Tennessee. But it was a 6-3 decision. We actually thought it's early. I thought it was going to be in July, but it came today. The 3 liberal justices, Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor, of course, dissented because they still don't know what a woman is, I guess. And but doesn't matter. 6-3 is a win. And so now, yes, U.S. versus Skrmetti. He's the Attorney General of Tennessee, and they're the ones who brought this. And I actually just talked to both people, Jack Johnson, who I had on your show when I hosted last week talking about this, and William Lamberth, who's the leader of the Republicans on the in the Assembly side. They brought this bill, and Skrmetti took it to D.C. and argued it, and they won. And so, yes, puberty blockers can remain illegal for minors in this state, as well as the surgeries. And this all comes back to when Matt Walsh exposed Vanderbilt University for actually doing these surgeries on minors, and how that had to be halted. And then this law came out, and they said no more. And so, yes, right, as I've always say, the last stand, the center of the universe, Tennessee, has been able to now push this to become law, where minors cannot, without parental consent, I suppose, get puberty blockers or transition surgeries that they may regret later on in life. Because I keep reminding everybody, it's not like a tattoo. You cut off those private parts, they're not growing back. So, so exactly. Yeah, so we've now got that in the books, and that's fantastic because it's part of the chinking at the armor, or the Jenga game, you could say, of undoing all of this past craziness that we've had to live through since COVID. And Tennessee's leading the way, and I'm thrilled. And that's what brought me here in the first place, is a state that would do something like this. And they did it because the opposite, where I came from, they were the leaders of this. I actually invented this stuff in Oregon. So spread to Washington, and that's where it's so bad. Title IX, they're so bad for their girls and their children who play in sports and want privacy in locker rooms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The opposite here. God bless them. And of course, Alabama is going to do this too. It's in Arkansas. It's
Alabama. Yeah, Alabama has blocked it. So the fact that it's a Supreme Court case, in an indirect way, it definitely affects them.
And William Lamberth sent me a text. He wanted me to make sure everyone knew that it was a team effort, common sense rules. It wasn't just him. But Jack Johnson and William Lamberth are the ones who wrote the bill, carried the bill, got it through the legislature, got it through the Supreme Court. So great men who do things against evil can still win out.
Steve Abramowicz, really appreciate you coming on the show. People can read his latest stuff and catch his latest podcast at heartlandjournal.com. Steve, really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Peace be with you, brother.
Hi, This is Basil Boz with the Association for the Recovery of Children, and you're listening to Heartland Journal Podcast.
Welcome back to the Yaffee program. It is a revolution in common sense, and we're here Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. on News Talk 770 a.m., 92.5 FM, WVNN. And if you want to comment on anything, we got that WVNN Hot Take text line, 866-494-9866, 866-494-WVNN. Headline here from Fox News, definitely a big topic today. The FBI launches criminal investigations of John Brennan and James Comey. It says former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey are under a criminal investigation for potential wrongdoing related to the Trump-Russia probe, including allegedly making false statements to Congress. Now, that's what the Justice Department told Fox News yesterday. Now, CIA Director John Ratcliffe referred evidence of wrongdoing by Brennan to FBI Director Kash Patel for potential prosecution. The sources said that the referral was received and told Fox News Digital that a criminal investigation into Brennan was open and is underway. Now, DOJ sources declined to provide any further details. It is unclear at this point if the investigation spans beyond his alleged false statements to Congress. So we got to talk more about this right now with Steve Abramowicz, who is with the Heartland Journal. You can read his stuff and see his podcast and everything else at heartlandjournal.com. Steve, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I've been observing this stuff for almost, half a decade, and I used to call it the Federal Bureau of Ignoring Things. Antifa, BLM, Hillary Clinton, for a while there, like a decade, it became the Federal Bureau of Laptop Collection, like an electronic recycling center for government employees, right? I mean, they had Seth Rich's laptop, Hillary's, Hunter's, all the Epstein videos, Diddy's, like a library of this stuff for years. They just sat on it. Anthony Weiner and his wife at the time, now Alex Soros' trophy wife. That's a lot of evidence they could have made lists out of, but Pam Bondi, the new AG, says there is no list. She'd know. Somehow it went from on her desk to truckloads of info. Dan Bongino said they found a secret room of Comey's stuff they had to comb through. Now under criminal investigation, this Brennan that you just mentioned, former CIA chief, they say, so former FBI director and former CIA director under investigation, but no list of Johns or victims. So why is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail? For trafficking minors? But to who? Nobody, I guess. We talked about that last week. The official story is he downloaded porn to himself and not collecting blackmail material on anyone. Okay, we got to believe that. But why did he kill himself? They say that was suicide. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. But a bazillionaire kills himself for downloading child porn seems extreme. Diddy didn't. He's alive, and they didn't, drop all his worst charges, so he could have just waited it out. So is this the government taking a dive again on a major case, protecting the elites at the expense of the victims who are witnesses? And by the way, I'm sure could make a list, or if this is the world's greatest crime fighting force, like the old FBI TV show said it was, I think the former. Bondi is the blocker, regardless of what her underlings, Bongino and Cash, might want to disclose. And here we are. Look at the new shiny thing over there, another investigation of guys that probably won't go anywhere.
So you don't think the investigation into Comey and Brennan will go anywhere, even if they made false statements to Congress? Is that what you're saying? They put this out now as a distraction?
I mean, past his prologue, right? Why would all of a sudden, we're going to drop this thing about Epstein, stop talking about it, and we're going to look over there at these two that everybody has been looking at for a decade. Bongino wrote 3 books about it. They're both on the cover of 2 of them. And, nothing to see here, folks, right? So Hillary, the list goes on of all the list that Bondi said doesn't exist, that we are going to investigate and talk about, and Jim Jordan at the Committee of Investigations don't do anything about. So it's just one more of those. So why would we even think like, oh goody, it's time to finally see justice done with these bad guys? I don't think so. I mean, 2 of the accomplices got $1 million paydays from the government because they released their government issued texts that they were talking about all this bad stuff that was evidence. So I guess the answer is there's no progress. There's no justice that has been shown to say like, oh, he's going to get it just like Fauci got it. Oops. Oh, he's going to get it just like the Vegas shooter or the Pennsylvania assassin. Oops. No, nobody ever goes to jail for anything. Nobody, in the absence of transparency, conspiracy grows. And that's exactly what's happening on Twitter right now, is everybody saying, oh, Pam Bondi's lying, and oh, there's this, and oh, there's footage, and oh, the nose on the guy that they dragged out of the jail cell doesn't have the same nose as Epstein did. So there you go. All this JFK assassination conspiracy gets to flourish because they aren't being transparent. So to answer your question, which I'm sorry, I really kind of ranted, no, I don't think these 2 are going to do anything, because remember he wrote on the beach 86-47 saying like, okay, let's go after he'd already survived 2 attempts. Well, they drag him in to ask him questions. He walks out of there next day and he goes on a book tour to sell books. Well, that's not exactly justice, and that is certainly somebody on a list. In the old days, they would be arrested, they would be booked, they go get a lawyer, they have to defend themselves. I don't understand why they don't even do this. Most of the Democrats are lawyers. That used to be like a payday for them. They could be rich and famous by being a famous defense attorney, like the O.J. Simpson trial. Now they're out of work because they don't actually bust anybody.
So it's interesting you talk about the Epstein thing. I mean, Trump says that it's a distraction. Like, why are we still talking about it? I'm guessing you weren't happy about that.
No, because we talked about this. Dan Bongino spent 2,000 episodes, 2,000 hours telling everybody that the government had this big, huge cabal and this trafficking of children and this terrible stuff and all this murder and all this mayhem. And then all of a sudden Trump says, stop talking about it. But he's the same guy who released the JFK files that we've been talking about for 50 years. Bondi said she's got the MLK files, the alien files, COVID-19 files all on her desk. All of a sudden, it's disappeared and we got nothing to talk about. Move along, folks. There's nothing to see here. And the reason why people are freaking out on social media is because these were the MAGA people that voted for transparency. They wanted to finally see some justice from these big elites who thought they were above the law and could get away with everything. And so a guy like Kash Patel or a guy like Dan Bongino, these everymen, could come into the government and clean house, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, 6 months in, forget about it. We're not going to talk about it anymore. What? Are you crazy? That's the whole thing. And so, I think a lot of people really respect Trump because he went through the ringer like we did. They used to say even before the re-election, a lot of people in the African-American community could relate to him because the government was so mean to him and, oppressed him and came after him and threw everything. And a lot of people, not just the African Americans, but everybody had kind of felt whether the IRS or the FBI or the police had overreached and acted inappropriately towards them too, and they could understand Trump in that way. Then he gets finally back into power and we say, okay, right all these wrongs. And he says, well, we're not going to talk about that. But what I just really get upset about is that the victims. It's no different than the victims in Texas, who just got swept away by the floodwaters. We don't talk about the victims. They immediately wanted to make it political and say, oh, Trump fired everybody in the National Weather Service. Well, no, he didn't. So that's, fake news once again. But the point is like, well, what about the victims? Don't we care about the victims? Epstein had a lot of victims, thousands, potentially. That's what Pam Bondi said. But yet, nothing to see here, folks. They were trafficked to nobody. Ghislaine Maxwell's in jail for trafficking people to nobody. Diddy apparently didn't traffic anybody. And they said that Epstein downloaded porn on his own computer. It wasn't actually, blackmail material on any of these elites. What? That's just ridiculous. So they expect us to look away and not talk about it, but how can we not? The truth is still out there.
Well, but it seems like the biggest thing, too, is, this was kind of my criticism. They were the ones, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, like you said, Trump, they were the ones saying that they had the evidence. And now they're saying, they're the ones pushing that this was a problem. And then now they're saying it's not a problem.
I personally believe that Dan and Kash, if they were the AGs and not the director of the FBI or the deputy director of the FBI, which is, if you look at the hierarchy, it goes President, Attorney General, Department of Justice, then those two guys. It's her. You just have to listen to her. She hasn't had a press conference, she hasn't even tweeted since this announcement, when she used to go on Fox every day and everybody was complaining about stop going on Fox and actually do your job. So all of a sudden she becomes like, what now? Now, is this the playbook like we've been learning because of Dan and Kash telling us that like the former Attorney General after Jeff Sessions got thrown over the bus became Barr, and Barr was actually working with the other guys that allowed the Comeys and the Brennans of the world to do their worst? Is she like kind of the player there? Who knows? Until they give us actually details and information, we have to only live in a conspiracy world or a guessing world. And right now I have to guess that Pam Bondi is keeping secrets, that she was hired to actually be transparent.
But why?
Well, for all I know, she was the Attorney General of Florida at the same time that Epstein got his original deal to get out of jail, and everyone then knew him, and she didn't exactly prosecute to the full extent of the law, right? So maybe, and remember too that the other Florida guy, Matt Gaetz, who was supposed to originally be the Attorney General, is kind of like the Jeff Sessions, who, if they would have got him, he may have been a problem for the other side, and they had to get rid of him, but they got rid of him even before he was sworn in. So she becomes Plan B, comes in, here's the results. 6 months in, not getting the transparency that we really, really wanted. And you and I, being in the news and information business, we have nothing left to do than say, wait a minute, I've gathered all this material from Dan and his show and his books. There's the list. So now you tell me there's no list. Who am I supposed to believe? My eyes or what you say? Well, maybe that's the thing. So I'm not in the room, so I never get to know, like, yes, she was put there as a mole to specifically block and tackle for all the bad guys who dealt with Epstein and dealt with everything else, and Area 51 and MLK and, Fauci and LRS. I don't know that, but I can know that the results are pretty damning because we just got lied to. Do you think we were told the truth, that there was never any list of criminals to prosecute?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's possible there wasn't a list, honestly, just because I'm not saying Epstein wasn't guilty of stuff. I think he was, but I just wonder if maybe they were pushing that they had a lot of evidence and then the evidence isn't there.
Well, now there's a possibility that the former administration had enough time to delete it all, right? They could certainly have destroyed all this evidence, just like Hillary tried with her hammer to, hit the phone, even though we all know it's all backed up on a server somewhere at Verizon or AT&T. I suppose that is possible. But whatever happened to the truckload of evidence that was on its way from the FBI headquarters, or the secret room that Dan found, or the on my desk, that wasn't destroyed by a previous administration. That supposedly existed. She said it was this whole big mosaic of everything. Okay, that's a lot of piled onto your desk, but whatever. Where did it go? And she said it was megabits and gigabits of data that they had to look at, that they would never disclose the victims because that's child porn, let's just say, and we're not going to show that. Okay, great. Well, were the children just images by themselves, or were there actually adults there with them? We don't know, but I would assume so, or else why is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail? So they know something that they've even told us they do know, but yet they're not telling us that they know. And now all of a sudden they're saying, never mind what I told you before. The truth is now, believe this, nothing ever existed. Did this guy even exist? I never met him. Was he is he like a phantom? Is he like Kaiser Soze from the, from the Usual Suspects movie? We'll never know because they're not telling us, and they're the ones with all the information. But like I said, remember all those laptops that they stacked up. There's a lot of information that crosses over. Somebody has something, but they're saying they have nothing. There's a big difference.
Yeah. Steve Abramowicz, founder of the Heartland Journal. You can read his stuff at heartlandjournal.com. Steve, I know you're going to talk about this on your podcast and write about it at Heartland Journal. I appreciate you coming on, as always, my friend.
My pleasure. See you next week.
All right. See you then.
Hi, I'm Jake Angeli, America's Shaman, and you are listening to the Heartland Journal.
We're back here on the Yaffee program, News Talk 770 AM 92.5 FM WVNN. Don't forget, you can like the Yaffee Facebook page. I'll spell it, I know, Yaffee. You can follow me on X at Yaffee as well, or Instagram at Yaffee Live. Something we definitely got to talk about today is the Fallen Five, which the 5 U.S. military service members killed during the July 16th terrorist attack. This was in 2015 that happened in Chattanooga. Now, this is when a gunman attacked a U.S. military recruiting office and reserve center in Chattanooga. And one person who is joining me on the show right now from Tennessee is Steve Abramowicz. He's also the founder of the Heartland Journal. You can read his stuff, see his podcast at heartlandjournal.com. Steve, how are you today, sir?
I am doing great. I've only been doing this media stuff for about 5 years, and it used to be summer was slow news time, but for some reason 2025, between floods and politics and news and Epstein, there is no downtime. So that's crazy.
For sure. That's for sure.
But for guys like you and me, lots of content.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. So I know you wanted to talk about the anniversary of this terrorist attack that happened in Tennessee in 2015, 10 years ago.
I do indeed. But first, I want to thank you because I got to fill in for you when you went on that well-deserved long resting vacation. And I had a guest on named Nanette Mahler, who was from Stop Tennessee Valley Authority from Cheatham County, where the TVA wanted to put in that big old mega methane gas thing and move everybody off. Well, they just caved, and the president told the mayor, we're not going to do it. And so John Rich, me, Nanette, we had a victory. And it was the same week that I had Tennessee former Senator Frank Nicely on, who also passed away since last time I was on with you. So shout out to him and his funeral and his friends and family.
Yeah, prayers for his friends and family. I did not realize that, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I had his last interview, so I was pretty thrilled. He gave me a lot of good information about Tennessee because his family goes back 200 years in Tennessee. It was important. Eastern Tennessee, that is.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the five. Yeah, so it was 2015. A terrorist is what they call him, 24-year-old naturalized U.S. citizen born in Kuwait, Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz, shot up Air Force Base and killed 5 U.S. servicemen and sailors. Tragic day for Tennessee, and I just don't want anyone to forget it. It's the 10-year, so there's actually ceremonies that go on today every year at this time because it was Tennessee's 9/11. Let's put it that way. It was literally a terrorist attack on our soil against our military servicemen in Tennessee, and that is a shameful, terrible thing.
Yeah, it really is. And, one thing we were kind of talking during the break, but it doesn't, I don't think a lot of people remember this story nationwide. It doesn't get the attention that maybe you think it deserves.
Exactly right. I mean, 9/11, everyone talks about it. We have annual anniversaries. They deal with it before football and baseball games in September, but this was a July 16th attack, and it matters just as much as the rest of them. This guy was not on the terrorist watch list, but his father was, and so there was certainly an opportunity to say, like, hey, this is kind of a family affair. We want to keep an eye on these people to avoid another 9/11, and it was a failure of intelligence. It happened, and it's amazing, actually. I don't know if you've ever been there. I'm looking forward to going, but there's an actual monument that was built to them in Chattanooga with a wreath that has, an amazing memorial for this, a gold wreath that has the 5 spires, really inspirational. So if you ever get a chance to check that out in Hamilton County, please do.
Speaking with Steve Abramowicz, he is the founder of the Heartland Journal. So beyond that, we got to get into some national politics, of course. Former President Joe Biden, was he the president? I mean, those questions keep coming up. Seems like it was the auto pen in chief, as Senator Katie Britt called it. But there is kind of new information on the whole auto pen controversy this week.
Well, that's exactly right. Take a guess how many pardons were issued.
Oh, man, you put me on the spot.
I know.
It was quite a bit from what I remember. 30, I think?
4,245. Guess how many he signed? Guess how many he signed without the auto pen?
0?
1. His son.
1. Okay.
So therefore, you're led to believe, oh my goodness, what is going on here? Who's running the country? And like I said for a long time, it was a pull-up bureau. It wasn't him. He was busy, on the beach and having his therapies. And it turns out he had stage 4 cancer, which means he was probably in front of a doctor a lot of the times. And somebody else was running it. And so the mystery was, well, who? And so we know that there was this guy who was his chief of staff, his second one, and it was him. He literally emailed people and said, I approve these. Go ahead and do it. And there was a person who obviously pulled the trigger and pressed enter. But that means there are millions of documents that the Trump administration now has to look through to figure out, is that valid or is that not, including the appointment of a Supreme Court justice. So could this bring down the entire, let's just say, 4-year term of that administration? It is very possible because they literally did nothing by the book.
Now, you said it's possible, and of course it is because we're finding out new information here. But couldn't Biden just come back and say, yeah, well, I proved all that? I mean, what is this going to be difficult to prove is what I'm asking.
Well, he could, but let's remember that there was a special counsel who was put on his case, who literally sat for him and said, hey, he's a nice guy, but he can't remember a darn thing. So literally he was not fit to stand trial. So how could we then take him at his word now 2 years later saying, hey, by the way, I was totally involved in this. I was a hands-on guy. I reviewed all 4,000 of those files, and every single one of them met the criteria that I stringently was educated on in all my 50 years of politics. Right? It's just not going to fly. So the answer is, okay, fine. You say that, but you also said a lot of other things. So were you lying then, or are you lying now? And now, of course, the answer is nothing is going to happen. If we're lucky, a lot of the folks that got pardoned will recidivize. Odds are they will, and they'll go back to jail for something else, or like Al Capone went to jail for, tax evasion, not murder and mayhem. So there's that. Just rewards for everybody. But in terms of will Biden or his chief of staff or any of these other people not say executive privilege and get away with it? Of course they are. But at least now we know that nothing that he literally signed off on was what the voters wanted. Let's just put it that way. And that's really all we can get is disclosure. We can't expect, Alcatraz Island for all these people.
Well, that's a good point. But you said we can get disclosure, but what about I'm guessing we're not going to be able to negate what was in these executive orders, other than Trump reversing them with his own executive orders. You know what I'm saying? Because
there's a lot of them, so it's possible that something could, the low-hanging fruit for sure. Like if somebody was, really, really bad and maybe passed away 10 years ago, okay, fine. But the odds of, say, his chief of staff, Zeitz is his name, or himself doing time for breaking the law, no, I don't think that's going to happen. It'll be this old, move on. We're not, we're moving forward. We're not looking backwards. A little bit like the Epstein case that Trump's been out there. And Pram Bondi is like, hey, why are we talking about this creepy guy? He's gone. It's like, well, because his partner is in jail right now, and there may not be a list on paper, but there's one in her brain. So we get into this very weird thing where the swamp protects itself. But like I said, there is reputations, right? So who would ever hire this Zeitz guy again, or why would the Senate ever approve him for a cabinet post knowing that he did this? It's like John Brennan. Your reputation is ruined even though you did some really bad things. So there's that. There's a little bit of a silver lining there in terms of justice. But like I said, will we ever see him in jumpsuits in prison behind bars like all the memes? I don't think so. He had a chance to do that the first time with, lock her up. They didn't lock up anybody. And they haven't fired or locked up anybody to this day. So I just don't see that happening.
Now, do you think Congress needs to step in? And what I mean by that is they're obviously investigating, but do you need they need to pass some laws when it comes to the use of the auto pen? I mean, it seems like that maybe that should be done here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a newfangled thing, right? It wasn't, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington weren't able to use auto pen when he's out there, doing his thing. So it's a modern convenience like DocuSign that we all get at the bank or when we're trying to get a mortgage, which is convenient for us, but should it be? I think the answer is they'll never do it because they like the modern convenience, but there should be some kind of legal timestamp that says where were you, who was in the room, what did you do it for the national
something to shore up the process a little bit.
Yeah, like a notary, right? Like somebody that can say, yes, the president actually did this, not just some unelected person who happened to have the password today to, tweet like Elmo. Like Elmo would love to be able to say like, no, there's no such thing as an auto pen. I didn't say all that stuff. Like, or you know what I mean? So yes, there should be, but Congress won't, unless they vacate the chair like they did with McCarthy and put in Tim Burchett over Johnson, things like that you and I believe in, which is common sense, and unfortunately common sense is not common. They're never going to do it. They don't do anything. They don't give themselves pay cuts. They don't, do Doge cuts. They don't do any of this kind of stuff that would clean up the mess.
Did you hear that maybe it's possible that when we're talking about this rescissions package, which was passed in the House but making its way through the Senate, there's still a lot of controversy over the idea of defunding NPR and PBS, Corporation of Public Broadcasting, and maybe they're going to take some of that out. Maybe they're going to keep NPR funding in place or whatever. I guess we shouldn't be too surprised.
Well, they have to fire Elmo.
Happens.
They have to fire Elmo because on ethics grounds, he's obviously got some weird ideas like Kanye or something. But the answer to your question is, there you go. They're talking about $9 billion, $1 billion of which is for NPR, which uses, they say like 2 to 3% of their budget is from the government. So that $1 billion is not even important to them, but they can't even agree on that. 3 senators, Republican senators, voted no, and J.D. Vance had to come in there and break the tie on a simple we spend every 3 days, we spend $9 billion on interest on the debt. They couldn't come up with 3 days worth of interest to cut in that Doge that Elon Musk spent 6 months, I guess, exposing between USAID and NIH and all the rest. They couldn't even do that. So why would they ever say, yeah, we're going to make rules about the auto pen, or we're going to, rescind past pardons from a president who may or may not have gotten 81 million votes when there really aren't even 81 million Democrats. It defies logic for guys like you and I who are observers and have that common sense when the swamp is supposed to police themselves. Everybody needs a special prosecutor. I mean, Trump just came out against Adam Schiff for mortgage fraud. That mortgage fraud goes on over a decade. You don't think they figured that one out day one? If you or I tried to get away with mortgage fraud, we would be in jail. It's a federal offense. You cannot do that, especially when you have the insurance involved, the bank involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He did, and he was a congressman. That's one step removed from you and me. Anyone can be a congressman. It's hard to be a senator. There's only 2 per state. It's really hard to be a president. There's only 1 in the whole country. They tried to hang him with that. Remember, Letitia James? She also had mortgage fraud. So why isn't she in jail? Why doesn't she have to lawyer up? Why doesn't she have to answer questions in front of a jury? Because she's a protected class called politician.
Yep. Steve Abramowicz, he's the founder of the Heartland Journal. Read his stuff at heartlandjournal.com, his podcast as well. Steve, I always appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you again next week.
Next week. See you later. Bye.
Hey, this is Brecken Thies with The Federalist, and you're listening to the Heartland Journal Podcast.
To Yaffee Live. We're here on the Talk Monster. I am Tennessee's voice of reason in a world that is oftentimes very, very, very beyond reason. But, I helped you get through it. I hope you get through it. It is my public service to you, and I don't accept a dime of taxpayer funding to do it. So just think about that.
Think about all that money he makes here, though, folks. He'll make enough money today to buy new tires for his airplane.
I wish.
Yeah, sure.
All right, joining us on the show right now is Steve Abramowicz. He is the founder of the Heartland Journal. You can read his stuff at heartlandjournal.com. He's got an op-ed as well at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. It says the two-party system's fatal flaw. So, Steve, definitely got to talk about this. How are you, by the way, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I'll just tell you, those airplane tires are not cheap. So I don't know why you're getting a hard time. I mean, you got to earn it, right?
You would know, right? Because you're Mr. Air. You got your own plane or something? Is that how you?
I got people for that. I don't pay for that.
Okay, that's right.
Delta, Alaska,
All right. So talk about your op-ed here. What made you write this? The two-party system's fatal flaw.
Well, I'm an observer of American politics and have been for 5 decades now. So basically, there was a recent Gallup poll that came out that basically said exactly what I've been trying to explain for a long, long time. They're just smarter than me. 92% of Republicans consider themselves extremely or very proud to be Americans. Only 36, a third of Democrats say the same thing. So you got a problem with that. And so when we have a country that has 2 parties, unlike, say, Israel, that's got like 40, or even Toronto versus the rest of the country of Canada, you cannot really get along on a lot of issues that are America first, let's just say. And so there it is, right there in black and white. Gallup says that we are at odds with just the core principle of America is a great place to live and raise a family and be and work and earn a living and retire and all the rest, if the other side doesn't even agree with that.
So, that's kind of interesting. when I first saw this story, I figured you were probably going to.
Interesting. Isn't that kind of really interesting?
well, I guess when I first saw this story, and you're exactly right, I had almost wondered if you were kind of going down the road that we need to get away from the two-party system. But it doesn't. One, I think that might be impossible, honestly, but it doesn't really sound like that's the argument you're making.
No, I mean, back in the George Washington, Thomas Jefferson days, he advocated for only America voters, not party system.
Mm-hmm.
And so the party system was created after the founding of the country, and this is the flaw in it. As long as everybody, I can even give Carter props for being, pro-American. Think JFK, veterans. They both fought. They both actually had America's best interests in mind. They may have disagreed on certain things, tax rates, or they were both anti-communist, which helped quite a bit. But when we get to a point now where the other party is not even interested in America's priorities that we can agree on as citizens, we got a problem. We don't have a two-party system. We have a one-party system. We have a one-party system of Republicans. 92% believe America's great, and the others don't. So what are they voting for? To fix it or make it worse? That's the problem. So, no, I'm not advocating for anything other than what we've already got. I'm just saying that 249 years later, next year is the 250th anniversary of America, the Declaration of Independence, here it is. This is the flaw in the system, is that if a party decides to be anti-American, then we don't have a two-party system. We have a divided country.
So do you think there's a solution to this? I mean, are we ever going to get out of this division, or is this just the new normal?
Well, I'm biased because my solution would be don't vote Democrat. I mean, if they're going to literally run on campaigns that say we don't want God in our platform, we don't want citizens to vote, we want illegals to vote, all the things that they're running on, we want people to die before they're born, then don't vote that way. And if it becomes 100% one-party rule of Republicans, okay, fine. But we see what happens with that, too. They get infighting, and that's what we see in Tennessee, where we've got the establishment versus the MAGA versus the Rhino versus the this and the that. So there is no perfect system. This is democracy. This is Earth. Right? God doesn't, involved in politics, in my opinion. He does choose our leaders, but only to show us how flawed they are. So the answer is, what's the solution? You got to vote accordingly, and you have to decide, are you with the 36% that agree that that America's great, which means that the 2/3 don't, or are you with the party that says America's great, and then we got some flaws on the margins, like should we or should we not have school choice or something like that? Like that, you can live with that. Can you live with America's terrible and everything we ever did was bad, and I'm going to vote that way and make it worse? No, you can't. It's not a good idea. You end up like Seattle.
Yeah, this is a great example of this, I believe, is when Biden was in the White House, they left the border open. And I would tell people, if you don't like the country, you're not going to want to protect its borders. You're not going to want to protect its sovereignty. You're going to keep the borders open because you believe, one, that the country somehow deserves it and all these other people from other countries deserve to come here. But you're going to want to undermine the very fabric of the nation by keeping open borders. So do you kind of agree with me? It's kind of an example of that?
It is. It's the end days of that, because America was supposed to be a melting pot, right? We're supposed to come here from our war-torn country or to avoid, certain death or famine, and come here and then become American, learn the language, go to school and learn civics and learn about our founding fathers and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and why that is amazing, because it is the only country on planet Earth ever founded on liberty. None of the other ones ever did that, even Jerusalem. And so the point is that when you get here, why would you want to bring your problems from your old country, communism, socialism, Marxism, eco-terrorism, gangsterism, narco-terrorism, whatever, why would you want to bring that here and repeat it when it's been failed and it killed everybody? So don't do that. Come here for all the right reasons. You raise a family, participate in run for office, do what you want to do, but use the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution as your guidepost, your lone star, the reason not to come here and give us laws from the Middle East and dress in attire that doesn't make sense in the middle of the summer. We just have an assimilation problem, and it's because they stopped actually asking immigrants to participate in that. You used to have to go through a many, many year process of classes, learn the Constitution, learn the language, do the rest. But around the 60s, 70s, they said, no, we got to do away with that because it's racist. Well, is it? It's really just American. And no other country in the world doesn't do that. And the ones that have stopped doing it, like France and the UK, you can see what's happening. All the infrastructure is falling apart because they don't have the same traditional values that they were founded on. Some would call those Judeo-Christian values. Some would just call them Christian values. But I call them American values because the Constitution is only like 28 pages long. It's all right there, but they don't do it. And so, of course, the kids going to school today in public schools are going to come out of there without that pride and not know that they just think it's the worst place in the world if they read those George Zinn books in their history class. Gen Z, 24% is the pride rate. You can't have a country like that. You gotta believe in the core principles in order to all come together on special issues like an emergency, right? Why would anybody care if Hurricane Helene hurts a bunch of people from North Carolina if you live in Berkeley, California, and you are raised to believe that America is, racist from top to bottom? You wouldn't. We can't have that. So to answer your question, the solution going forward is we need more candidates and more lawmakers and more leaders who are unifying and can remind everybody why America is so exceptional and so amazing, not the opposite. That's what my op-ed was about. And I write one every Friday. They're very similar. The week before was about, some police brutality that it needs to be kind of looked at in terms of, is this unifying or dividing in terms of what were they actually arresting the person for? And I just think that politics has gotten into so many walks of our life that it's really just torn us apart as to what we can believe in, including what's true. Because as you know, if it bleeds, it leads. The media is going to always want to go with the sensational story. And a lot of times that makes the person on the right side of history, like, say, a Kyle Rittenhouse, look like the bad guy.
Speaking with Steve Abramowicz, he's the founder of the Heartland Journal. You can read this op-ed there and at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Steve, I did want to ask you about one other topic before I let you go. I'm curious your thoughts on this. There's been some talk about privatizing the TVA because, you have the TVA, Trump appoints the board. People are mad because the board's not diverse enough or whatever. So Tim Burchett comes out, and I came out as well, and I said, fine, let's sell it and privatize it. Why does the government run it? What do you think about that idea?
I like the idea in principle, and if you went back, 50 years ago, I would say that's probably a great idea. It's the right time. It's responsible for lowering prices and creating about 90% of the energy that we use here in the SEC states, because it didn't exist prior to FDR signing it into existence. However, I come from the West Coast. California and Washington State both privatized after bankruptcies their utilities, PG&E and up there City Lights in Seattle. And what happened was private equity firms bought it, and basically they pay the highest rates in the country because they ripped us off. And if you remember those Enron days when they were messing with the cost of energy per unit on hot days and versus cold and transfer, they just started playing insider stock trading games with everybody's utility bills at our expense. And of course, when it's freezing, you can't plug in your Tesla and charge it and all these other things. So what happens is capitalism at its extreme get very, very, vulturistic, capitalistic. And since TVA would technically be a monopoly, they can get away with it. So I don't love the idea of a 2025 American capitalist privatization, but I do like the idea of don't let those guys do the top-down communist stuff that agencies in government normally do, which is grow at the expense of the end user because they have nobody to answer to, mostly in the executive suites or the administration offices because they're waiting to collect a pension. So another one of the fatal flaws of our system is that, you hand it over to private enterprise, and will they be good guys or bad guys? Same thing happens with tolls. Do you hand over the tolls? This is what Senator Frank Nicely, who passed away a couple weeks ago, told me. You hand over the tolls to privatization, and who are the companies that actually run this? Some of them are mob, right? That's not what you want when it comes down to turn on your air conditioning in the middle of the summer, that, you're getting extorted. So
you sound torn on it. You sound a little torn. That was kind of your...
If I could wave a magic wand, yes, I would absolutely like it to be in private hands so that it can be competition, so that prices can go down. But with a monopoly, if you don't have competition, they can do what they want with prices, and that's the problem. So unless they make 5 companies out of it, that's the problem. If they make just one...
Well, maybe that's the solution. Like you said, just break it up and then sell it. That would be the way to solve that. I mean, it wasn't something I was too big on until I saw people complaining, because Trump, appoints the board members, and he appointed white men to be the board members, and people are like, well, no, they have to keep up with all these diversity, affirmative action appointments and all, and they're very upset about it. Then that was when I was like, okay, forget it then. If that's how you're going to play this, sell it,
Energy prices have to be nonpartisan. It's not racist. Everyone's got a house. Everybody needs to turn on the refrigerator to keep our food fresh or whatever. So that shouldn't even be an issue of race. That's the old board thing that BlackRock was able to do, where everybody has to be, representative of something, from American Indians to blacks to Indian Americans. Everybody's got to be at the table in order to discuss these things. Well, this is an easy one.
Right.
Are prices lower? Yes or no? Do we want them to be higher because you're white? No, that doesn't make any sense. We all want them lower. So there you go. If they break it up and create competition, like the Department of Education is supposedly doing, breaking it up into 50 states and not just one, that'd be a good thing.
Gotcha.
We won't know until hindsight who gets their hands at the wheel, because, that's what people do, is they sit on the board and they collect their coupons. They get paid.
Steve Abramowicz, really appreciate you coming on the show. As always, I know we'll talk to you again next week.
My pleasure. See ya.
All right. Have a...
Hi, this is Ralph Winter. I'm the producer of X-Men and Star Trek movies, and you're listening to Heartland Journal Podcast.
It's back here on Yaffee Live, Talk Radio 102.3. I am Tennessee's voice of reason, Chattanooga's conservative conscience, and I'm glad you're joining the show today. By the way, if you miss any of the show live, check out the podcast on the website, WGOW.com, or anywhere podcasts are available. Joining me on the show right now is Steve Abramowicz. He is the founder of the Heartland Journal. You can read his latest stuff, see his podcast as well, at heartlandjournal.com. And Steve, my first question for you today is, did you know that Sydney Sweeney is a Nazi, apparently? Did you know that?
Yes, I know. She's awful, terrible, but man, does she easy on the eyes.
No, don't say that. That can make you a Nazi. If you say she's good looking, apparently that makes you believer in eugenics. I guess that's the argument some of the left are making today.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that the left has no sense of humor, right? It's a play on words, genes as in denim, Jeans, genes as in genetics. But I'll tell you, Sweeney with American Eagle, what a coup. I mean, when I was young and excitable, Brooke Shields, America's Sweetheart, she did Calvin Klein ads, I think it was. And in the 90s, they had Marky Mark and Kate Moss all buff and sexy in their underwear selling it. You weren't around, but imagine how many red bikinis were sold off the shelf after Phoebe Cates was in Family or Pastimes at Ridgemont High. Or remember those Carl Jr. commercials when the model's eating big old hamburgers? I mean, that works. So why not put Sweet next to a Shelby GTO to sell jeans like James Dean?
Yeah, well, and let me play the ad. I grabbed the audio of the ad here. I played it yesterday on the show, but I'll play it just to kind of tell people what we're talking about, and then we can give some examples of, literally, there are people very upset about this, apparently, but here it is.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney, Casper Jeans.
That's it. Apparently that's Nazi propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, she needs a voice coach. It's a little bit hard to hear at the beginning there. But, I remember 21-year-old sex symbol Nastasia Kinski saying to Vogue, let's do it with a snake and in the nude. I don't even remember what she was selling, but I remember that picture. I try to forget those, Dove soap ads with all the weirdos, but that's a big difference in sales. Natasha wasn't blonde hair, blue eyed. She just looking woman, had the right curves. And what's the result? American Eagles reported huge sales off of it. And Bud Light still can't sell a can of beer after going with, that dude Dylan Mulvaney for some reason, which will go down in history as the dumbest brand destruction by any ad agency in history, from number one selling beer brand to last. Fire everyone on Madison Avenue associated with that. And you know what? If the left is trying to repeal the law of physics that sex sells, they can forget it. No wonder their favorability rating is at 19%, and Cory Booker is going insane on C-SPAN.
Well, yeah, what is that about? I kind of missed the story of Cory Booker. I just heard what is he upset about this time? Why is he so mad?
He's flailing around, He did a picture where he's in a pink top and pink super shorts, and trying to be Mr., bulky man, but in reality, he just looks like an idiot. And so I think he's desperate that his party is collapsing. Those 19% numbers are pretty bad. I mean, that's paid staffers and family members, and you're losing family members fast if you're in the 20s. So they don't learn, right? Even institutions of higher learning, there's no learning going on. First, we had Belmont and Vanderbilt University, the private schools, $90,000 a year here in Tennessee, and now UTK, Vols, secretly going against Trump because DEI matters more than tuition when you rely on federal funds for support. Parents, alumni, and students don't much matter with the gravy train rolling in. Maybe Bud Light sells at all the military bases around the world so they don't have to survive on sales. But, Lizzo as your spokesmodel for Victoria's Secret, not such a great idea in magazines. And by the way, according to state numbers, this year's fall enrollment for freshmen saw a 50% drop at Tennessee State University. So compared to 2023, you got to wonder why, right?
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. I'm speaking with Steve Abramowicz, founder of the Heartland Journal. So, yeah, you were talking about a poll recently that said that the Democrat Party has like a 19% approval rating. So, as they try to make Trump seem like he's very unpopular, but then you look at those numbers, that is definitely not good for the party. Also, we have the new GDP numbers out today. Trump's touting it, 3%. Seems to be good news. What do you think about it?
I think it's amazing, and it's kind of funny how it plays right into this. Like, if American Eagles is going to sell more because of a good ad campaign, that helps the economy, right? But if you're going to be stupid and super woke and super liberal because you think that's where the money is, and you sell less or you enroll less students, that's bad for the economy because you're selling less of whatever it is, whether it be tuition or hamburgers or jeans. So, hello. I mean, I think Paige Spiranak has done more for bringing women into golf than Tiger did for young African-American kids. I mean, she's like having a billboard, like Tiger was a billboard for Nike golf balls. Everyone wants to be healthy and beautiful, or at least hope to be. We kind of miss the humor, too, because like I said, it's genes. It's denim. It's not genetics. We're not talking about euthanasia or, what.
It's a play on words, like you said.
This is not Hamas genocide. This is selling pants to girls like Supergirls.
Yeah, I mean, the point of this ad is that she's hot and she likes to wear American Eagle jeans. And so they played words because it's jeans. That's it. That's
it, man. And think of it like, okay, you've got AOC, you've got Ilhan Omar, you've got Crockett from Texas, you've got Jay Paul from Seattle, you've got Bass, mayor of LA. Those are the female sex symbols of the Democratic Party. Thank you. So, there's always been this thing where they say, yeah, Republicans are hotter than Democrats. That's the way it is, even back to the hippie days. Okay, for some people, different strokes, different folks, that's what you want. But if you're going to say, and we have policy, well, then you better be pretty good at it. I'd take a Katie Britt or a Nancy Mace over Patty Murray and Elizabeth Warren any day. I'm not being sexist. I'm talking about their policies. Their policies are so bad and so ugly. I want smart politicians, and they just happen to be attractive on the right.
That's a good point. I mean, I don't
even think Sweeney. I bet you Sweeney is not even a. I mean, I couldn't.
Oh, I doubt it. Yeah,
say for sure, but I take the odds that if you ask her a question in an interview, she'd probably be very liberal. But they're freaking out because she's attractive. And if you look at the people on the street protesting universities and BLM and anti-cops and all this stuff, the Antifa, they're not very attractive. Look at the mugshots. So maybe it's just this blowback on beauty. Well, if you want to be the Democratic Party anti-beauty party, good luck not falling into the tens.
All right, so I got to play another cut for you then, because somebody shared this with me, and it's very much on the same type thing. This is you hear at the beginning of this cut, you hear someone talking about how they lost weight, and then people were mad at her for losing weight because they said she was fat shaming or something. Then you hear some leftists say, oh, yeah, that's true, and there's something called fat oppression. I mean, listen, this is all the left thinks. Listen to it.
According to some folks, me being happy about loss equates to me being fat phobic.
Wow, there is so much to unpack here. So this creator lost a lot of weight, saying that it was part of their health journey. By the way, they don't have pronouns in their bio, so I'm just going to use the pronouns they, them. And they're upset because people keep saying that they have a disorder when they don't. And they're upset that people are calling them fat phobic for being proud of their weight loss. They also go on to say that body positivity is about celebrating all bodies, and that they're frustrated that they are being ignored or discarded in that movement because they're thin now. So let me begin by saying that the body positivity movement is not a self-love movement. It's an intersectional civil rights movement for people of color, queer people, disabled people, and fat people. Even people who are in marginalized bodies, if they are not fat, they should not be participating in discussions about size-based oppression unless they are being supportive or uplifting our voices. So yes, the fact that this creator is now thin does mean that discussions around size within body positive spaces are no longer available to them. And clearly this creator is silencing fat people.
In one cut, she said fat oppression, marginalized groups, they, them pronouns, and I don't even, everyone just wants to be a victim. Is that really the message here?
Well, they used to call that pseudoscience, or what I like to call psychobabble, because what used to happen is somewhere in the bowels of Harvard or MIT or places you never, ever, ever go have a beer, they would make up this junk, and they would get tenure, and they would get published, and they would keep their job, and they'd make too much for what they do, but nobody would ever hear from them. But now this is the reason they want 8-year-olds to vote or have the right to change their gender if they want to, because they're so dumb and these ideas are so ridiculous. People don't, I guess they forget, like, well, if you're a man, you can't talk about a woman's opinion. And if you're fat, you can't talk about a thin person's opinion. If you're thin, you can't talk about a fat person's opinion. And if you're anything other than what we want you to be, you can't say anything about anything. Well, guess what? That's not a democracy. That's a theocracy, or some kind of science-based society that I don't live in. So when that woman, whoever that is, got her PhD in basket weaving, she comes around and she says, hey, look, a microphone. I can now tell everybody how their rights can be infringed upon by me and my stupid friends because I got a stupid idea and I can say a lot of fancy words about it. Well, guess what? That don't sell. And there's another reason why the Democrats are in the 19s. I cannot wait for the midterms because I have a really strong sense to believe that they're going to be set back a generation in terms of their numbers, and their plan for census 2030 to get all these fake Democrats back in D.C. isn't going to happen by God's grace. And so what you just played, I couldn't even listen to it. I mean, you have to like follow your line of thinking and go, okay, well, what are you trying to tell me? Am I learning something from this or not? And the answer is no, you're not. You're actually being
uneducated, I guess. I don't
believe what you don't believe. Like, everyone knows that if you're overweight, you have a heart problem. It's all about the heart, and they don't have one.
Yeah, wow. When she started going down this road, and I was like, man, it's a completely different world. I mean, it's just
Imagine
a different
if you were
world.
A college kid and you're a junior and you're trying to debate your thesis and you have to listen to that 5 days a week. You're going to freak out. It is going to, sooner or later, lead to rebellion. And that's why the Jacobins cut off all the heads of the French monarchy, because they couldn't stand it anymore.
Oh, man, we got to the French Revolution. I prefer not to have the French Revolution here, Steve. I'm just going to say.
I do, too. That's why you have to vote these people out and turn them out. And don't listen to them. Listen to Katie Britt. Listen to Tuberville. They at least know a thing or two lived a life. They didn't just go out of community college straight to the Congress and then spend the next 40 years making millions of dollars because they were told they're smart, when in reality, they ain't. The emperor has no clothes.
Yeah. Steve Abramowicz?
Sweeney.
He's the founder of the Heartland Journal. We'll talk more with him next week. Steve, I appreciate it, my friend.
Adios, amigo.
Hi, my name is David Boundblood. I'm currently in Hong Kong. I'm with Terebinth Leadership Advisory, former military veteran, here to report government corruption here on the Heartland Journal podcast.
All right, glad to be back with you on Yaffee Live. This is the Talk Monster, and I am Tennessee's voice of reason, Chattanooga's conservative conscience. Going to get to our guest in just a second, but I do want to update you on the breaking news. Still don't know a whole lot, but there is breaking news today that 5 soldiers have been injured in a shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia, but the suspect is in custody. We don't know much more about the situation, the motivation, or anything else, but ABC News will cover it throughout the day, of course, on our station, and if anything breaks, I will let you know. Joining me right now on the show is Steve Abramowicz. He is the founder of the Heartland Journal, and you can read his stuff, catch out his podcast as well at heartlandjournal.com. Steve, how are you today?
I am doing great. How are you?
Doing good. And it seems like Senator Marsha Blackburn is doing well. She is deciding to run for governor. Not too surprising. Most people expected that. But as far as I can tell, she is the big front runner. I can't imagine anyone really being able to compete against her.
Yeah, I know. First off, my heart goes out to the folks in Georgia. Big prayers. Sorry this is happening again. It's terrible. And yeah, my Twitter feed all day is 24/7, just everybody from dog catcher to state senate. Marsha, they said in Brady Bunch. True, very true. Jeremy Faison, he said 2 decades ago when he was endorsing her, unfortunately, it's 4 decades ago, she was the founder of the Williamson County, where I am, Young Republicans. Back in 1989, she was the chair of the Williamson County Republican Party, which is at the time when Dems ran the state for like 150 years since Reconstruction. So Marsha has been there at the creation of the Republican Party in Tennessee, making it is today. And, very MAGA. She was one of the senators, I believe, to endorse Trump when he ran the first time in 2016. So, yep, welcome to the party, Marsha. Here we go.
By the way, I don't know if you've seen that there are some rumblings that maybe Pete Hegseth could jump into the race and run for governor. He's the only person I can think of that could maybe give her a run for her money. Now, he has denied that he's interested, but what do you think about that possibility?
There's a rumor. There's lots of them. The only person who officially ran was Rose, who's a congressman. I think what's going to end up happening is Tim Burchett is probably going to leave Knoxville Congress and become, he's the U.S. congressman from Knoxville, and take her seat as an appointment, and kind of shuffles the decks, maybe even put Glenn Jacobs into that role. But as far as Pete Hegseth, I never believed it. He already took a massive pay cut just to be the Secretary of Defense for Trump and have to go through all that nightmare. He's not born and raised in Tennessee like Marsha, and Tennessee really likes those type of folks. So I think he'd be silly to do it. If anything, it may have just been one of those trial balloons as an emphasis, like either you get in here and get that Trump endorsement, or I'm going to put one of my own guys in there because time's a wasted. It's August 6th already.
That's kind of interesting. That's a good point. Yeah, then maybe they were just trying to see what Marsha was going to do. That's very interesting. So moving on to some other things, I know you have a piece here on your website, heartlandjournal.com, the true cost of AI, and talking about how, we think about AI, how it affects us, in our jobs and everything else, but you're kind of looking at it from a different angle, especially when it comes to more rural areas of Tennessee and other states. What's in your piece?
Yeah, every time you sit at home and Google or Twitter or tweet or whatever you do, it's actually an environmental disaster. So yeah, I think that was one of the longer pieces I've done, about 2,000 words. So I can try to fit it in between the next commercial break. But the bottom line is folks are getting wise now, as people are waking up to the idea that they really like to drink water. and water their lawns and grow food on a farm to eat and all the wonderful things that come with water, like air conditioning and life. So Monroe County, Georgia, we just sent prayers to them. Their commissioners unanimously voted 5-0 to deny a second data center going in on their land. They wanted rezoning land for a $6 billion, 1.2 gigawatt data center campus outside Macon, and that's just one of them. So Back to the Future's DeLorean time machine, if you remember, that only required 1.21 gigawatts, one time from lightning. This is every year. 900 acres, 9-building facility by Ingram entities located near Bolingbrook along Highway 41 South. Same day Trump picks Oak Ridge, where the boys come from, their hometown, for the Tennessee to add another one. So the question is, why do we need all this power and data storage with the 24/7 buzzing noise? You can't live next to it, glowing, light pollution. Trump wants it to be a race, and electric bills are already going up because it's happening. And where will the water come from? When I was a kid growing up in drought-prone wine country, now California, the big concern was 10 gallons per vine per week. Now we're looking at gallons in the trillions, but not for wine, which I like, but to store Facebook posts of your cat. So these large data centers, consuming millions of gallons of water per day, comparable to the water usage of a small town, like all of Monroe County is 31,000 people. So they say 300 gallons a day per house, and the smaller data centers use 100,000 gallons per day. A large data center can consume anywhere from 1 million to 5 million gallons of water per day. So you assume 3 people in a house, that's about 30,000 gallons a day for the humans, 10 times that for Skynet. And like I said, Monroe already had one. This would have been their second if the council was dumb enough to fall for it. So double that number, and none for reservoirs to fight fires in California, right? Like Pacific Palisades.
Well, let me ask you this then, because, you bring up a lot of great concerns, but what do we do then? Because I just don't see the AI train stopping at this point. You know what I mean? Like it seems like it's going to keep going. So what's the solution here?
It's full bore. Elon Musk's XAI Gigafactory, it needs 300 megawatts of energy, which is enough power for 200,000 homes. That's in Memphis. So while their peak water demand is expected to be near about 5 million gallons per day to cool that supercomputer. But again, for what? That's a lot of data when an iPhone 4 is pretty much all you ever need to map your road trips, listen to the world's collection of music, and take a phone call. So there are 5,426 data centers in the U.S. right now. The UK has 1,000 under that. China only has 500. So I'm not even sure what they mean by a race. We're so far ahead. Qatar, home of the Muslim Brotherhood, but never mind that. They just said they'll invest $500 billion in the U.S. over the next decade. So why? Trump says America is going to win the global AI race, but nobody's chasing us. So it's all for nothing. That current 5,400 centers uses 5.5 billion gallons a day. All of Tennessee uses 205 million gallons a day just from the Spartan Aquifer near Memphis, which is awesome. It's ancient. It's beautiful. The water's great. But for this, it's their primary water supply. So the data centers are using 50 times all Tennessee consumption per day. Where are the farmers going to get water to make the food? Heck, where's the drinking water going to come from? You can't cloud seed enough. We'll look like the surface of the moon in a few years. So groundwater makes up about 30% of all readily available fresh water on the planet. So to answer your question is, stop it. The only way to stop it is to stop it, because I really do think catastrophic effects, domino effects, compounding interest, however you want to look at it, there's not enough water to feed the Terminators.
That's very interesting, because you're like the only one saying that. I'm not seeing anyone on either side say, stop it. You know what I mean? It seems like Republicans
you want to know
and
why?
Democrats. Yeah,
you want to know why I'm the only person saying it? Because I don't get corporate funding. Trump administration names Oak Ridge Reservation as location for private partnership to build AI centers. Oak Ridge Nuclear used only 730 million gallons a year of water. Piedmont Lithium has shifted its focus to a site in Gaston County, North Carolina. The Tennessee project, known as Tennessee Lithium, was initially planned as a 30,000 metric ton per year lithium hydroxide processing facility. Extracting 1 ton of lithium can require approximately 500,000 gallons of water. So there goes another 15 billion of water just for that. There's plans for Idaho, Kentucky, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Those brainiacs at McKinsey say analysts suggest that demand for AI-ready data centers capacity will rise at an average rate of 33% a year between 2023 and 2030. Globally, the market is expected to reach $4 trillion by 2030. We're going to need a bigger planet. Hopefully, Elon finds water on Mars and leaves ours alone so Sydney Sweeney can sell more genes, to living people. It's not good.
Is that why we're building a nuclear reactor on the moon? Maybe try to get some of the water from the moon? Is that? Because I know they found like ice caps on the moon and stuff, so it means there's some water.
They're going to have to start mining meteors and everything else because God didn't give us enough for AI if it's going to grow this fast. Again, the Library of Congress takes up a lot of space. I remember the early Amazon commercials were like, not big enough, not big enough. They were measuring the pyramids of Giza, not big enough to store all the books, right? Or all the things that Amazon sells. Well, now we're talking about like, why do we need all these data sets when it's actually getting smaller to compute, right? It used to be like NASA had all these warehouses full of mainframes, and now it's the size of your iPhone in your pocket or a shuffle. But why do we need all these data centers, especially since the environmental problem? And by the way, that's just water. I'm not even talking about the arsenic and the CO2 or the O2 that comes out. Like, these things are not healthy. You cannot live by them. So not only are they taking the water that you can't drink and live by them, you can't sleep at night because of the buzzing or the blue light that's flashing. If you look at the picture on my website, that blue light, you close your eyes to go to sleep and you're going to see that blue light, brighter than your eyelid. So it doesn't make sense unless the future that God intended for us is an AI data storage planet. But I think what would happen is we'd look a lot more like the moon or Mars before that ever happened. And we're all going to have to end up moving off to some other Eden that hasn't been discovered yet. So it bothers me quite a bit that AI centers for these trillions of dollars of profits are moving people off of their land because it's becoming uninhabitable. And it's just going to have a never-ending thirst for our water. So maybe I'm crazy, and that's the only reason why I'm talking about it. But I'm just telling you the statistics, $4 trillion by 2030. How do you get there? Well, it's got to be 3 times bigger than it is today, and it's already consuming 5 billion gallons of water a day globally.
So
the ocean, sooner or later, the Pacific Ocean is going to be, go ahead.
Well, what is the response? I'm sure the water issue comes up. Are these AI companies responding? They're just not concerned?
No, they're telling you it's all good. Don't worry about it. But like Monroe County had to have commissioners come along and say no. All 5 of them said no, we're not doing it. Unanimous decision because they realized enough is enough. They couldn't do a second one, even though the companies tried to get a second one. So they'll move on to the next county and say, well, we'll do it here instead. And then before you know it, they're tapping into these aquifers all around Earth, trying to cool them off. But sooner or later, those run out of water, and then you're left with seawater, Atlantic and Pacific and the rest, Indian Ocean. That won't work because people don't live in those, but we also will be out of water in the aquifers before they ever get to that. So desalinization is great, recycled water is great, whatever, but it evaporates. It turns into steam. You can't use it forever. It's not like a fuel-injected engine in a car. So the answer is what Monroe County, Georgia did. People are going to have to start pushing back. Don't allow these things because enough is enough. They don't need them. And I don't know where Trump is getting the idea that we have to win a race when there's nobody behind us. Nobody wants to. Even China's not doing this. If it was a race, they'd have 1,000 or 10,000. They don't.
Steve Abramowicz, he is with the Heartland Journal. You can read his piece about this, True Cost of AI, right there at heartlandjournal.com. Steve, I appreciate you coming on. It's really an interesting topic. Everyone's talking about AI, but kind of an interesting aspect that maybe isn't being discussed enough. So I appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you again in the future.
You're the man. See you next week.
All right, there you go. If you want to react, we got the text monster, 423-267-1023.
Hi, my name is Jessica Aaron Bennett. I am a stunt professional, intimacy professional, and filmmaker, and you're on the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jana Marie Truesdell, and I am on the Heartland Journal Podcast.
We're back here on Yaffee Live on the Talk Monster. I am Tennessee's voice of reason, Chattanooga's conservative conscience. Glad you're joining the show today. If you miss any of the show live, the podcast will be up on the website, WGOW.com, or, of course, on any of the podcast outlets. Joining me right now is Steve Abramowicz. He is the founder of the Heartland Journal. You can read his stuff and check out his podcast there, heartlandjournal.com. Steve, how are you today, sir?
I'm excellent. End of summer, feeling good. How are you?
I'm good. Although, I was texting you earlier and, asking maybe what you might want to discuss. And you texted me back. You said State Senator Heidi Campbell is crazy. And I know that she's...
Hey, that wasn't me. That was some hitchhiker on the side of the road. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't talk like that about elected officials. Come on. That's wrong number. Who is this?
I don't really know what the context was. I know who she is, but what was the context for you to criticize her?
Okay. I know you're a youngster, but you are a red-blooded American male, so I'll ask. Did you ever see the movie with Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds, Best Little Cat House in Texas?
No. I know who they are, but no, I've not seen that movie.
Okay, I'm very disappointed. I cleaned it up for you anyway. One of my favorite movies. It ain't Cat for you listeners out there who were born any time after Michael. But anyway, so it has a song in it. Texas has a blank house in it. Lord have mercy on our souls. So if you listen to music, you heard it. But I can't help thinking that because Tennessee, like Texas, has a blue flu in it. Used to be called police unions going on strike and cops staying home, the blue flu. Get it? But This one, like a novel virus like COVID, is blue Democrat legislature, not blue dog, which were the good ones. They're all gone, but blue state Democrat legislatures in red states, like a blue flu. If you look at an electoral map, the blue looks like Maui from 30,000 feet in a sea of red state votes, right? So we saw Texas Dems up and leave for Illinois, paid for by a failed candidate for their governor and Senate, Beto Michael Francis, not Hispanic O'Rourke, to avoid redistricting. That's all they were trying to do. But they didn't have quorum, so it wouldn't even matter. But they are getting it anyway in their face, losing 5 congressional seats. So I lived near Oregon when the Republicans did this to avoid Green New Deal. But this is different. Okay. So to answer your question, Tennessee should gerrymander too. We lose Cohen, the only Dem from Tennessee in D.C. out of Memphis, which is a disaster run forever by Dems until Senator Brent Taylor got elected and is trying to hashtag make Memphis matter and taking on the liberal-funded DAs there. So Tennessee has our own AOC, our own Jasmine Crockett, our own Beto. But she won, unlike him, and didn't lose, twice. We have Afton Ben running for my district for Congress to replace Mark Green, very conservative guy who was on Homeland Security. The AOC of Tennessee, they call her Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, 2 Justins, one from Memphis, one from Nashville, highest crime cities in the state, and Heidi, who you asked about, state senator representing Nashville, and of course, Gloria Johnson from Knoxville that took on Marshall Blackburn for some reason. Someone told her that was a good idea and got creamed statewide 65-35, I think. So she's from Colorado, and that don't fly in Tennessee. Don't Colorado my Tennessee. And Lewis, and I would say, at TennesseeConservativeNews.com, who I know you have on all the time, which is too bad because I actually just had on my show yesterday his gal Olivia Lucia. She too is from Colorado, but unlike Gloria, unlike Heidi, they learn progressivism, which will destroy your state, not make the people that live there better off. Not at all. Makes them worse off every single time.
Okay, so basically all of that to say Tennessee needs to follow in Texas's lead and redistrict to prevent, some of these radical Democrats from causing problems in our state.
If they want to get that cat house out of here, absolutely, because it's a proven failure. So why do we even tolerate these people? Tennessee doesn't need them. They could have quorum without every Democrat in the state, including Heidi. And if you ever look at my Twitter or her Twitter, I wish you would, at Heartland Journal, everything she says is wrong. I literally said today, is today opposite day? Like, she's trying to divide everybody when we all know that a house divided can't stand. That's from the Bible and our friend Abraham Lincoln. But yet here she is telling everybody that if you're MAGA, you don't deserve to be here. Just like Jasmine Crockett yesterday. If you're white and Republican, you should leave Texas. Like, huh? No, that's the opposite. You should leave Texas if that's the way you feel, because Texas isn't like that. Racist.
Yeah, okay. I understand. Now, will that happen? I'm very skeptical that even Republicans in Tennessee are willing to do this.
Well, it depends on what you mean by this. I don't think they'll gerrymander, but there is a huge movement. I've had them on my show several times, kind of all the players that are trying to make Nashville red again. And so they think that they can get motivated. It doesn't take a lot of voters to do it if they just turn out. There's a notoriously very low turnout ratio, but if they could just vote the way they really feel, they believe they could get rid of some of these folks. And so, like I said, Afton Ben, who is the AOC of Tennessee, they call her, she's running for District 7. She doesn't live in District 7. I actually just found this out because I've only been here 3 years yesterday. Actually, Sunday was my 3-year anniversary in Tennessee. Hello. You don't have to live in a district to run, which is kind of crazy. The county just has to kind of pass through there like a river runs through it. But she's going to run for that seat, which she doesn't really have a chance in heck. So they will ultimately, somehow I'm sure she'll keep her seat like Gloria Johnson did. But the answer is we have to vote them out. We can't expect gerrymandering or some kind of parliamentarian trick to do away with these people. But since their policies are so bad anyway, why not just get rid of them? So let's turn Memphis red. Let's turn Nashville red. Let's get Chattanooga and Knoxville redder, because the people actually want it. And there's about a 200-year history of the Democratic Party doing really bad things that don't really help the people that pay taxes or live or work or raise kids there, right? I mean, we know this. We talk about it every day. So don't worry about gerrymandering and those kind of deals. Let's just get a majority state.
Speaking with Steve Abramowicz, he's the founder of the Heartland Journal. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I'm kind of with you. I wish we could maybe gerrymander and get rid of some of those Democrat seats. Republicans in Tennessee aren't going to do that, especially under the current leadership. I wish.
Well, here's the thing about that, just real quick, is that if California is successful to offset what Texas just did today, they're losing 5 Democrats. California wants to redo it, but it's been done to death. I don't think they can really find it. They want to add 5 back, so that neuters the 2. Mm-hmm. But then you've got Kentucky, Kansas, Wyoming, Tennessee, all these other red states that could say, okay, we can play at that game too. And before you know it, there's 50 new congressmen up in D.C. and 50 less Democrats up in D.C. to actually do the work that we all voted for with Trump with a popular mandate, MAGA, whatever your issue is. So if they did actually take the dead people off the voter rolls, if they did actually register voters who are citizens, not illegals, and all the other games they play, we actually could really see 50 more Republicans in D.C. and 50 less Democrats. But they don't want to. They're playing the other game where we got like Gavin Newsom out there saying, hey, my state is a disaster. Why can't the rest of the country come along and be 49 more disasters? Well, I don't think the voters want that. But if they gerrymander and play that game, they could look just like Illinois, which is gerrymandered it, where if you look at it, it looks like an Easter egg. Stripes and paisleys and all these weird numbers. It's just crazy how they did it, but they did it.
Speaking with Steve Abramowicz, you had mentioned, supporting President Trump's agenda. His current agenda right now is trying to get a peace deal between Zelensky and Putin. Had a summit with Putin in Alaska, then met with Zelensky at the White House, other European leaders as well. He says he's optimistic. There's talk of security guarantees for Ukraine if this happens. Russia not too happy about all of that. But what do you think?
Another week, another peace deal. I mean, the guy is going to walk away with like 9 peace prizes if they, were honest in that regard too. He did Israel, Iran, he did Cambodia, Vietnam. I mean, he's basically every week it's a new deal. So this one is the big one. We've spent $200 billion, I guess, so far to get to here. So you would think he could do it, but it reminds me a lot of like the Palestine Liberation Organization back in the day when Yasser Arafat was running it. They would never say yes to anything good because there was more money in it for them to just be a pain in the butt. So Zelensky is like, well, no, we don't want peace, actually. And it's like, but could you also write me a check because I need to buy a suit? You told me to, right? You said I have to have a suit. I can't afford it. You got to send it. So the whole thing about Ukraine, Russia is just a tragedy, in my opinion. So many lives lost, so much infrastructure damage, such tragedy for these kids and these people, all because I don't really know, because he's hard-headed. They're going to lose. They're never going to get Crimea back. That's a done deal. Obama gave that away. They're probably going to end up losing what's called the Donbass, which is kind of used to be the basket of Europe. It's what Stalin took over, carved out all of those Cossack farmers. So I don't think so, but that's what you get. Going to war that you can't win is you're going to lose territory and you're going to lose the mineral rights underneath the ground. So c'est la vie. But Trump is a peacemaker. He has not started any wars. He's only kind of a history now of stopping them, like Syria. So if all goes according to plan, Zelensky will cave. He will say, okay, whatever terms we have to stop the bombing, and we could live happily ever after. But he is the problem child. But of course, you've got all these Democrats that are throwing up Ukraine flags, and on their Twitter feed, there's Ukraine flags and Ukraine as our best friends. But people forget they're actually run by Nazis. Yikes.
You say Ukraine is run by Nazis?
Oh, yeah. No joke. Google it. Their government is literally fascist, far right-wing extremist militant Nazis. And they were really bad to the Jewish people during World War II. I'm not making it up.
Oh, okay. During World War II. Zelensky, you don't think he's a Nazi, though? He's Jewish, right?
I think, yeah, born Jewish, which, so is Bernie Sanders, but it doesn't really matter. But what does matter is, who they worship. What idols do they worship? Is it money or is it God? And so in my opinion, I think what he's doing by torturing his people for this is, let's just say, corrupt. Ukraine is, as a fact, the most corrupt country in the world leading up to this little fracas. So you can't really give them a pass by saying like, oh, they're just innocent people being attacked. It's a rough place to live. It's a rough neighborhood.
Yeah, well, they have had corruption problems for years. That's definitely true. It's one reason why Zelensky was elected. He was supposed to take care of that. Obviously, the war has been his main priority. Steve Abramowicz, really appreciate you coming on the show. As always, you can check out your stuff at heartlandjournal.com. You got an interview up as well at the Tennessee Conservative, so TennesseeConservativeNews.com. There's an interview with you there as well. Steve, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
See you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.